Hello, this is Brandy Kaiser, and we are Rochester IT and Business Solutions. We really appreciate everyone joining today. I am very excited about this presentation from Stedman Solutions. To give you a little background, Stedman Solutions became a partner of ours some time ago because while we specialize in cybersecurity and managed IT, we cannot call ourselves experts in SQL SQL Server, and we love that we found Stedman Solutions to fill that need for our clients. And today we will have Steve Stedman himself speaking, a 34-year veteran and expert in this field. So I am sure we're going to learn a lot of amazing tips on keeping those servers running and not going down. So Steve, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for that intro, Brandy. I've been working with SQL Server, like Brandy said, there for 34 years. And one of the things that I have always done is continuous improvement and continuous education and trying to get better and stronger at everything I do. And 10 years or almost 10 years ago, 9.5 now, I started Stedman Solutions, where we do SQL Server services. And with that, we help people with all things SQL Server. I have a program called Database Health Monitor that I've built over the last 13 years that gives us the tooling that we need in order to be able to support SQL servers. And I'm also a volunteer firefighter and EMT in our local community, which is just part of what I do to give back to the community. And with that, I'm also I do a lot of boating. So, and the slide says yachtsman, but I don't know if that's quite the right term. Do a little bit of boating in my spare time. That's what I do for fun.
Yeah. So, and as I said, I sail, so I am a water aficionado and enthusiast myself. So wonderful. And thank you for your volunteer service.
Yep, that's it's one of those things I always tell stories about that no matter how bad things are with your SQL Server, it's usually easier to fix than things I come across with my fire department experiences. So, all right, so I guess at this point, let's just roll into the detail here. One of the things that we want to be aware of is that SQL Server is really the lifeblood of your business. A lot of people don't always realize it, and sometimes you end up with the database administrator being the person who's sitting closest to the SQL Server when it needs attention. But the fact is, a lot of businesses, the core of that business is the SQL Server. And whether it's your finance system or whether it's your production system or running the assembly line in a factory, when things go wrong with the SQL Server, or even if it just slows down a little bit, or if it's down, there's a lot of impact from that on systems. And that impact to downtime can get really expensive when you've got a bunch of people sitting around with twiddling their thumbs waiting for SQL Server to come back up after an incident. We've worked with, a lot of different clients on this, and one I can think of we worked with was a local plywood factory, and they make fancy plywoods. I don't even know what that really means, but like not your basic plywood that goes under the floor, but like the fancier plywood for some reason. And we were working with them, and they were having problems where they weren't able to produce as much plywood as they used to be able to produce because their SQL Server, which kept track of all of the processes on the factory floor, was bogging things down. It was running so slow that they would be ready to feed wood into their machines to create plywood, however they do that, and they would be stuck waiting for the SQL Server to let them proceed. And with that, that's the kind of thing, a pretty typical thing where we go in and they were not able to make the money they needed to make on a day-to-day basis because the SQL Server was slowing them down so much. And we were able to go in and help speed up their system and get it running quicker so that the SQL Server was not the bottleneck in their process. And that's a pretty common thing, whether it's plywood or manufacturing something else or just processing financial information. SQL Server slowing things down can have a really big impact on things. Um, with that, one of the things that's really important when you're keeping track of your SQL servers, preventing them from going down, keeping them running quickly, is to be able to track performance. And a big part of this is regular monitoring. And I like to look at the different charts on things like weights and CPU and load and things like that in order to be able to see over time, is your SQL server getting better or is your SQL server getting worse? And from that, we can then take a look at things like performance tuning and what can you do to keep that SQL server running well before it gets to a point that it's impacting your business. I kind of think of it like in your car. If the only time you ever got an oil change was when your car stopped running at some point because it was out of oil, well, your car probably wouldn't run for very long and it would probably have a lot of further issues down the road. SQL Server is the same way. If you delay that maintenance until it's too late, you're going to have a lot of issues, whether it's performance tuning or capacity, things like that. So the key here is really being able to know what's going on with that system, having the tools in place to be able to track, monitor, and staying informed as to what's happening with that system so that when things change, when things start to go bad, you know about it before they take out your systems, take down your company, or in that plywood factory example, take down their ability to produce as much plywood as they needed to produce on a daily basis. Another thing that's really important is versioning and patching. And it used to be, gosh, it used to be like 10, 12 years ago that you waited on Microsoft SQL Server until updates had some of them been tested for a year before you applied them. But that's not the case anymore because there's so many issues out there with vulnerabilities in any I shouldn't just say any Microsoft product, but any product that you run anywhere has vulnerabilities. And when vulnerabilities are found by Microsoft, they come out with patching. And yeah, the patching also includes performance fixes and other improvements and features like that. But the number one reason that you want to do versioning and patching is in order to be able to keep those vulnerabilities or patch those vulnerabilities as soon as you come across them. But the danger there is sometimes you get in the point of you get an email or notice that says an update was available today. And so you go, oh my gosh, I've got to get that installed tonight before because there's a vulnerability, you install it. And then you find out, well, the SQL Server has some issues with that with that update that was applied. What we like to do is to be able to take a look at it and see when an update comes out. We generally don't like to install it the day it's released. And usually what we like to do, or what I recommend doing, is having a patch strategy that you have a test environment or a sample environment or a dev environment or something like that that has the same versions that's running on your production systems. And then when those updates and patches come out, you apply that on a test environment. Now, we work with so many systems that we do that. And once we know that it works in one environment, we're then able to take it and deploy it to other environments. But we've seen some things with SQL Server patches in the last couple of years where you apply the patch the day it's released, and then you find out that something was wrong with it, either a performance issue or something didn't work, and Microsoft backs it out 2 days later. Well, we always like to make sure things are tested and make sure that it's not a mistake that they release that patch before we start applying patches. And that's an important thing. And staying informed and being able to track what those patches are is important there too, and knowing what's in them. And if you look at a patch that came out this week and see there's 6 vulnerabilities patched, that's different, a different priority than looking at it and seeing that there's perhaps 3 performance improvements that were done in that SQL Server patch. Some people I see where they like to apply SQL Server patches quarterly, no matter what. That's not always a good practice because once a vulnerability is out, if something gets into your system with ransomware or other things like that, those vulnerabilities may be exploited to get to your SQL Server. So we try and figure out what the important updates are and get them out quickly, and then figure out what the ones are that are maybe not quite as urgent and then get them out in a more timely manner. So backups. This is one of those things that if there was only one job that a database administrator had to do, I would say it's the backup plan. It's the most important thing. It's the thing that's going to save your company when things go bad. One of the things over the years doing this, I've got calls from people who did not have a good backup plan. They had something bad happen to their system, whether it was a hardware crash or ransomware or other things like that. And they call me and say, well, what can we do? And that's one of the most difficult parts of my job is when I have to tell people, well, you didn't really have a backup plan and there's not really anything you can do. And that's challenging. So one of my goals is to always make sure that people understand the importance of the backups and not just to have someone tell you, oh yeah, we've got backups, but to make sure you've got backups that you test regularly. My belief is it's not about the backups, but it's about the restore. And unless you've tested your backups, you don't know for sure that it's going to restore what you need. Uh, Gosh, I've been called by people who said, yeah, we've been doing VM backups for the last 4 years on our SQL server every single day. And we have all those kept in this massive data storage thing. And it turns out that the VM snapshots they were doing did not have a consistent state of the database. So they brought the snapshot back and their databases didn't work. They were corrupt at that point. So being able to test those restores, whether it's a virtual machine snapshot or whether it's your SQL Server backups or some other appliance doing them, testing is the most important things with backups. Because really, unless you test it, you don't know for sure that it's going to do what you need it to do. Now, the other thing to consider here is recovery point objective and recovery time objective. Gosh, I was working with a medical clinic and they said, oh yeah, we've got backups. We do every Saturday, we do backups, full backup of our entire database. And there happened to be one of the business managers for that company on the call. And I said, well, what happens if it's Thursday and your system completely crashes and your last backup was last Saturday night? How much data do you lose? Oh, well, that's not important. And then the business manager jumps in with, what do you mean that's not important? I mean, that's the lifeblood of that medical clinic, was being able to keep their patient data safe and being able to track that. So that's an example where different people on the team had a different understanding of the recovery point objective, meaning the IT people thought it was last Saturday was good enough. The business manager, once we got into it, we ended up with 5-minute backups so that we would do weekly fulls, daily diffs, and then every 5 minutes a log backup. And that way, in the event of a catastrophe, we would lose no more than 5 minutes worth of data. He was okay with that, but losing possibly up to a week's worth of data was completely unacceptable. Now, the other side of that, that's recovery point we're talking about there, but the other side is recovery time. How long is it going to take you to get that back? I know some people who back up to the cloud and that's their only backup. And then they find out that, well, that cold storage that we've been putting in our backups to is going to take 3 days to copy the backups back to our local system in order to be able to do the restore. So in any type of failure where you had to do a restore, you have to wait for that 3 days for all that data to copy. Well, that's one of those things that you can mitigate the risk with that by having a local copy as well as a cloud-based or cold storage type copy that you can use that local copy for those big emergencies and then use the cloud copy when you have something major like a disaster that takes out your entire location. The other thing that's important with this is integrity checks. One of the things we've seen is that people will end up with a corrupt database somewhere along the way due to an IO issue that might have been 3 or 4 years ago, and they just keep backing up that corrupt database and don't know it's corrupt. And then they get to the point they want to restore it and they find out, oh, there's corruption in this database and it's not going to work the way we thought it was going to work. The other thing I want to touch on is the business continuity plan. And this is important. Well, I guess it's not important to everybody because not everybody needs to have their systems up and running all the time. It might depend on the business. But if you're in a business that needs uptime every single day, even if it's only 8 to 5 p.m. your local time, you need to be aware that a business continuity plan is important. And what you want to do with the business continuity plan is look at what would happen, play like the worst case scenario game and look at, well, worst case scenario, if there was a fire in your data center room in your building, if that's where you keep your servers, for instance, and all those servers were destroyed, what's your recovery plan? And if that recovery plan for some is, gee, we'll go buy some new computers and we'll start out fresh with new data, that's a very different recovery plan than, oh, we'll just flip on our second data center that's in a different city and start running out of that one for the next week or 2 weeks or month until we get the primary site rebuilt. And the thing with this is business continuity, a lot of people think they have it, but until you actually get in and test it and do training and confirm that you can flip over to that second site, you don't know for sure that that second site is going to be available when you need it. We've seen companies fail and succeed on this side, and it just feels so good when we've set them up and flip them over to that second site when that disaster hits and everything is good. Cybersecurity. I know you guys do a lot with cybersecurity, but one of the things, this is just so important. We just want to make sure that you're prepared for ransomware, you secure your environments. And I would say that from the database perspective, it's not what to do if you get hit with ransomware. It's planning and assuming that you will get hit with it one day and making sure that you have everything in place. The thing we've seen with SQL Server databases is a lot of them are so huge that when people, even when they pay ransomware fees of hundreds of thousands of dollars, that they're not able to decrypt their database files because they're so large. So figuring out how to make sure that your data, you can get your databases back even when you're hit with ransomware one day. So a lot of this can be overwhelming. And if you need help, here's some ways we can help. Stedman Solutions works with nothing but SQL Server. We have true SQL Server specialists. Our team, I've been doing this for 34 years. Most of our team members have been in over 20 years. We have a couple of younger people who've joined who don't have quite that much, but they're always paired with someone who has more experience. And with that, I mean, we have the best staffing and SQL expertise in order to be able to support your databases. We have the best monitoring and alerting, meaning with Database Health Monitor and the other tools we've built on top of that, we know as problems come up so we can take care of them before they become too urgent. And we have the best support in the industry on this, as well as extremely good mentoring. And on the mentoring side, one of the things that we do, a lot of DBAs historically have kind of been known as not wanting to share information, but we realize it's far more valuable to share everything we do. So we teach, we have classes available, and when we fix things, we do everything we can to educate people on what was done so you can learn from it and do better next time. Plus, we're the price performance leader in this area. So keep us in mind, and we're ready to work. We're ready to help with your SQL Server needs.
Awesome. That was a lot of information that I'm sure our mutual clients can benefit from. And I was also gratified because I've been saying a lot of these things about cybersecurity myself and backups and continuity plans. So it's good to hear somebody else saying it for a change. So excellent. So for the folks out there, if you are in need of their considerable expertise, you can schedule a consultation with me and I'll get them on board. And if you're not ready for that yet, but do want to do some diligence, we do have two really good resources available for download, that being the real cost of maintaining your SQL server, as well as maintaining your SQL server. So please feel free to download those, and you can do that on this PowerPoint or on our site, www.roc-it.net. So thank you again, gentlemen, for your time and generosity in sharing your expertise. It was a real treat. So for those that are seeing this on our YouTube channel, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you very much and have a fantastic day.